The Capital, by the English poet W.H. Auden, was first published in his 1940 collection Another Time. Auden had become increasingly concerned with challenging society's values and exploring human psychology and the moral responsibilities of individuals within modern cities. The fact that the poem was also written on the eve of the Second World War explains its concerns with themes of exile, industrialisation, and urban corruption, which were very much part of the 1930s zeitgeist. In The Capital, Auden describes a capital city. Although the identity of the city is never specified, from certain clues in the first stanza, such as the use of the words quarter, café, and exiles, we can infer that he is referring to Paris, the capital city of France. Paris in the 1930s was alive with energy and contrast. Writers, artists, and travellers from around the world gathered in its smoky cafes to share ideas and argue about art and politics, while jazz spilled from nightclubs and the Folies Bergère dazzled audiences with glittering shows. In Montmartre, cabarets and red light districts added a sense of danger and excitement. At the same time, the wealthy enjoyed a lazy kind of luxury, drifting between elegant restaurants, theatres, and cafes, while those with less money often lived in the shadows of this glamour. In the poem, the poet speaks directly to the city, describing it as a place of wealth and entertainment. The rich spend their time seemingly relaxing and enjoying themselves, while lovers meet and exiles gather in cafes. The bright lights and music of the city distract people from the harshness of real life and make them feel powerful and important. But beneath the surface there is something darker. The wealthy seem to be marking time rather than achieving anything, caught in a kind of limbo. Among the exiles there is jealousy and backbiting, while many of the love affairs seem self-destructive rather than joyful. Not only this, but there are hidden factories where lives are used up and lonely people are worn down. Even in the countryside far away, the glow of the city tempts young people to leave their homes and be drawn in by its false promises. The poem is written in the form of an apostrophe. The city is personified and addressed throughout in the second person, you, which not only implies that it is an active agent, but also creates an accusatory, almost prosecutorial tone on the part of the speaker. It comprises 5 stanzas of 4 lines each, otherwise known as quatrains. It is written in free verse, which means that it has neither a fixed metrical or rhythmic structure, nor a set rhyme scheme. The consistent use of end-stopped final lines gives the poem a self-contained, meditative feel. The predominance of lines ending on an unstressed syllable, e.g. waiting and happen, produces a subdued, falling rhythm that tones down the ornate and often emotive diction, preventing it from tipping into hyperbole. Auden makes careful use of enjambment to mirror content. In the opening stanzas, most lines are end-stopped, reflecting the observational detachment of the speaker. In stanza 3, however, the first 3 lines run on, producing a sense of breathless momentum, which mirrors the individual's loss of control under the sway of the heart's invisible furies. In stanza 4, enjambment between lines 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 mimics the relentless, grinding attrition of industrial processes, in contrast to the clipped closure of surrounding lines. The poem develops in a clear pattern across its 5 stanzas. The first stanza looks at the city's surface, the rich, lovers, and exiles, showing how their pleasures are shallow and empty. The second stanza broadens the focus, showing how the city destroys natural rhythms and rules, creating dullness rather than freedom. In the third stanza, the poem moves inside people's minds, showing how music, romance, and excitement trick them and stir up uncontrolled emotions. The fourth stanza looks at hidden life in the city, where work and loneliness wear people down and destroy individuality. The final stanza shows the city's influence spreading into the countryside, tempting even the innocent. Overall, the city is presented as a powerful, corrupting force. The title, the capital, is significant because it gives the city a sense of power and authority. A capital is the centre of politics, culture, and wealth, which reflects how the poem presents the city as shaping, seducing, and controlling its inhabitants. The title also doesn't name a specific city, which makes the poem feel universal. Paris was Auden's inspiration, but it could just as easily represent any major city with glamour, inequality, and social pressure. By putting the city at the centre rather than the people, Auden emphasises its influence and the way it dominates those who live in or are drawn to it. The poem begins, "Quarter of pleasures where the rich are always waiting, waiting expensively for miracles to happen." The word quarter to mean an area of a city is a translation of the French word quartier, and so immediately suggests that we are in Paris. The way that it is described as being a quarter of pleasures suggests a hedonistic way of life. It is a garden of earthly delights, where food, drink, entertainment, and sex are freely available. The rich are portrayed as being in a constantly lazy state of expectation as they while away their time. They are always waiting, waiting expensively for miracles to happen. Auden's speaker depicts them as being jaded and bored, living a meaningless and unproductive life while their money is just thrown away. The anadiplosis in waiting, evokes Auden's perception of the futility of their existence. The apostrophe, "O little restaurant," reveals how the speaker is not just observant, he is also mocking. It sounds like he is praising the place, but really he's pointing out something unpleasant. The lovers in this little restaurant kiss. They eat each other rather than the food. But this also seems destructive and ultimately futile, as love is reduced to mere physical appetite. The cafe where exiles have established a malicious village evokes the émigrés, like the writers Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald, the artists Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dalí, and the political revolutionary Leon Trotsky, who all flocked to Paris in the 1920s and 1930s. This malicious village suggests a community where there is gossiping and backbiting. Both the images of the restaurant and the cafe present human interaction as both self-serving and predatory. This is not a flattering portrait of the city. Auden continues to paint a less than romanticised picture of Paris, which goes against its stereotypes. He directly addresses Paris as you, and so effectively personifies it. You, with your charm and your apparatus, have abolished the strictness of winter and the spring's compulsion. Auden's tone is condemnatory and accusatory here in the way that he says, you with your charm and apparatus. There's a real sense of artifice and superficiality in this capital city, as Auden pairs the word charm with apparatus. Charm is usually a positive attribute and evokes the city's allure. But here, when paired with the word apparatus, it suggests deception, that people are lured and bewitched by it. The word apparatus means machinery, reducing the city's charm to something mechanical and manufactured. Together, the two words suggest a system of seduction, of pleasure that is something constructed and false. The two seasons of winter and spring embody natural extremes. Winter brings discipline, hardship, and restraint, while spring brings abundance, vitality, and growth. The city has, however, abolished both, flattening human experience into something seasonless and sanitized. The seasons are no longer distinguishable from one another, and everything has become monotonous. There's no sense of control or discipline or rules here in terms of self-restraint. Anything goes. Far from your lights, the outraged punitive father. The city is out of the outraged punitive father's jurisdiction. This feels almost mythic or biblical, as if patriarchal authority, such as law, morality, and judgment, has been banished from the city's dazzling lights. The effect is not freedom, but disconnection from any grounding authority, and it has become neither exciting nor liberating. The dullness of mere obedience here is apparent. The rules are that there are no rules, and paradoxically, you have to abide by them. The outrageous, licentious behaviour that Paris demands is just dull. There's a sense that these people are merely sheep. There is nothing unique, individual, or exciting about any of them. If everyone is required to rebel, then rebellion is just another form of conformism. The third stanza continues, yet with orchestras and glances, oh, you betray us to belief in our infinite powers. Here Auden seems to suggest that Paris deliberately beguiles the people who have flocked there to live with orchestras and glances. Music and culture, as well as romance and seduction. There's a sense that it is Paris herself who is flirting with them and giving them the eye. But she is a false lover, a siren who merely lures them to their destruction. The interjection "oh" serves to emphasize and enhance this sense of betrayal. These people are blinded by the romance to believe that they have infinite powers. But this is merely hubris. They feel godlike and untouchable, but only because they've swallowed the city's performance. Note that Auden refers to these people using the first person plural us, rather than they, to include not only the reader, but himself also. We are naive, trusting, and completely oblivious to what is going on around us, he says. The stanza continues, and the innocent, unobservant offender falls in a moment victim to the heart's invisible furies. Note the interesting use of oxymoron and contrast here. The offender is innocent, These people who fall under Paris's spell are not to blame for their behaviour. They have been unobservant and have let their guard down in a city where hedonism is a way of life, and anyway, it only takes a moment for them to become a victim. The repetition of vowel sounds at the beginning of a number of words here is not quite assonance, as the sounds are different, but nevertheless are quite harsh on the reader's ear, as they need to be articulated separately and deliberately. Infinite, innocent, unobservant offender. This enhances the suggestion of the deliberate nature of what Paris is up to. The image of the heart's invisible furies combines the classical with the psychological. The Furies in Greek mythology were goddesses of vengeance who drove people mad. But Auden relocates these inside the heart, suggesting that once the individual has been seduced, the city unleashes uncontrollable passions such as love, anger, despair, and jealousy that can neither be seen nor mastered. They all may come from within, but they have been triggered by the city's exterior temptations. The fourth stanza begins, "In unlighted streets you hide away the appalling." Underneath the patina of sophistication, glamour, and passion, there is a darker, seamier world. The unlighted streets in the capital's underbelly conceal the appalling. These streets are not simply dark, but are deliberately left unlit. The prefix "un" makes it sound intentional. Auden suggests, with his continued use of personification in the phrase "you hide away," that the capital is deliberately covering this world up. He reveals the horror to be the factories where lives are made for a temporary use, like collars or chairs. The industries that make the wealthy people's lives possible consume the workers who operate in them. These factories not only make products for sale, but also make the lives of the people who work there for a temporary use. The simile that Auden employs here is especially powerful. These people are merely commodities, as disposable as the attachable shirt collars or chairs that they churn out. Away from the glittering social life of the restaurants, cafes, and pleasure gardens, these workers lead lonely and unfulfilling lives. The description of rooms where the lonely are battered slowly like pebbles into fortuitous shapes builds up the sense of pathos. The simile in the image of them being battered slowly like pebbles into fortuitous shapes suggests not only the workers' exploitation, but also the isolation of urban life. The participle battered is violent, but also wearying. Rather than a sudden blow, they are worn down into fortuitous shapes, in the same way that pebbles are eroded by being battered on the shoreline. The adjective fortuitous underlines the randomness and lack of agency. Just as pebbles don't choose their shapes, these workers are shaped by systemic forces beyond their control. Additionally, pebbles end up smooth and indistinguishable from one another, with all their individuality erased. In the final stanza, Auden shifts his perspective to see the capital from the outside. But the sky you illumine, your glow is visible far into the dark countryside, the enormous, the frozen. The bright lights of the city illuminate the sky. Many miles away in the countryside, this lightened sky is visible. This image continues the personification of the city as an entity with agency. The glow has both a physical reach, i.e., the light pollution visible from afar, and a symbolic one, i.e., the reach of its cultural seduction. The countryside is presented in almost mythic terms as being vast, cold, and immobile, in stark contrast to the city's frantic, frenzied, and overheated life. Do note, however, that the adjective dark here doesn't mean sinister, it just means unlit. dull and lacking in stimulation. This contrast helps to explain the pull of the city. It offers warmth, glamour, and movement against rural passivity and sluggishness. The simile hinting at the forbidden like a wicked uncle is fascinating. The wicked uncle is not the devil, but is instead familiar and playful yet dangerous, and once again evokes the naivety of these people. The city's temptation isn't presented as sin, but as sly, corrupting mischief, a naughty invitation that children might not understand as dangerous until it is too late. The poem's final line, "Night after night to the farmer's children you beckon," underscores the idea that the victims here are innocent, rural children who we imagine as being tempted away from the frozen countryside and their fate to be the next generation on the family farm, into the false, warm and glamorous embrace of the capital. The repeated, rhythmic night after night underscores the relentlessness of this call. If we look at the overall structure of the poem, we can see that we begin with the people who are already residents of the capital and end with the city's pull on those outside its orbit. Its corruptive power doesn't stop at its borders. Instead, it radiates outwards, drawing in the unsuspecting in a perpetual cycle of temptation, desire, and disappointment, so that new people are caught up in the same patterns of illusion and disillusion as those already within it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.